The night was unusually quiet, the kind of silence that made even the smallest sound feel dangerous, as if the darkness itself was listening. Somewhere deep behind enemy lines, a small group of soldiers moved carefully through the shadows, each step calculated, each breath controlled. This was not an ordinary mission. There would be no reinforcements, no second chances, and no room for error. What they were about to do had the potential to change the entire course of the war overnight, but if they failed, the consequences would be catastrophic, not just for them, but for thousands of others who had no idea what was at stake. Leading the team was a man known for his calm under pressure, a soldier who had seen enough of war to understand that the smallest decisions could have the biggest consequences. He had been chosen for this mission, not because he was fearless, but because he understood fear and knew how to control it. The war had reached a critical point, with both sides locked in a brutal stalemate that had lasted 4 months. Trenches stretched endlessly across the landscape, and every attempt to break through had resulted in heavy losses, with little to show for it. Commanders were desperate for a breakthrough, something that could shift the balance and give them an advantage. That opportunity came in the form of intelligence gathered through weeks of careful observation and intercepted communications. Deep within enemy territory, there was a heavily guarded facility, a place that did not appear on any official maps, but was believed to be the center of a new and dangerous operation. Some said it was a weapons depot. Others believed it was a communication hub coordinating large-scale attacks. Whatever it was, one thing was certain. If it could be destroyed, the impact would be immediate and devastating. The mission was simple in theory, but nearly impossible in execution. A small team would infiltrate enemy territory under the cover of darkness, reach the facility, plant explosives, and escape before anyone realized what had happened. There would be no backup, no support, and no guarantee of survival. The men chosen for the task were among the best, each one trained for situations where failure was not an option. Yet even they understood the risks. As they prepared for the mission, checking their weapons and equipment one last time, there was an unspoken tension in the air. They all knew that this could be their final operation. As they crossed into enemy territory, the world seemed to shrink around them. Every sound became amplified, every shadow a potential threat. They moved slowly, avoiding patrols and navigating through unfamiliar terrain with nothing but limited maps and instinct to guide them. Hours passed as they pushed forward, deeper into hostile ground. The closer they got to their target, the tighter security became. Guards were stationed at regular intervals. Searchlights swept across the area, and the faint hum of machinery could be heard in the distance. The facility was real, and it was heavily protected. Reaching the outer perimeter was only the beginning. The team had to find a way inside without raising the alarm. One wrong move, one unexpected noise, and the entire operation would collapse. Using carefully planned tactics, they managed to bypass the first line of defense, slipping through gaps in patrol patterns and avoiding detection by seconds. Once inside, the scale of the facility became clear. It was larger than expected, filled with equipment, vehicles, and personnel moving with purpose. Whatever was happening here, it was important, and it was happening soon. Time was running out. The team split into smaller groups, each assigned a specific objective. Explosives had to be placed at key points to ensure maximum damage. Communication lines needed to be disrupted to prevent any immediate response. Every second counted. As they moved through the facility, the tension grew. At any moment, they could be discovered. And then, it happened. A guard turned the corner at the wrong time, spotting one of the soldiers before he could react. For a brief moment, everything froze. Then, chaos erupted. Gunfire shattered the silence. Alarms began to blare, and the entire facility came alive with activity. The element of surprise was gone, but the mission was not over. If anything, it had become even more urgent. The team accelerated their plan, placing the remaining explosives as quickly as possible while fighting to hold off the rapidly approaching enemy forces. Bullets flew through the air, echoing off the walls, as the soldiers pushed forward, refusing to abandon the mission. One by one, the charges were set. The leader checked his watch, calculating the time they had left. Escape was no longer a clean operation. They would have to fight their way out. Gathering what remained of the team, he gave the signal to move. They ran through the facility, navigating through corridors now filled with enemy soldiers, using every ounce of their training to stay alive. The odds were against them, but they kept going. As they reached the outer edge of the facility, The first explosion tore through the structure. The ground shook violently, followed by a chain reaction of blasts that lit up the night sky. Fire and debris erupted in all directions, consuming everything in their path. The mission had succeeded, but survival was still not guaranteed. The team pushed forward, using the chaos to their advantage. Enemy forces were disoriented, struggling to respond to the sudden destruction. Amid the confusion, the soldiers managed to break through the perimeter and disappear back into the darkness. Behind them, the facility burned, its destruction sending shockwaves through the enemy's operations. By the time the sun rose, the impact of the mission was already being felt. Communication lines had been severed, supply chains disrupted, and whatever operation had been planned was now in ruins. The balance of the war had shifted, not through a massive battle, but through a single, carefully executed mission carried out in the shadows. Commanders on both sides struggled to understand what had happened, how such a heavily guarded facility could be destroyed in a matter of hours. For the soldiers who carried out the mission, there were no parades, no public recognition. Their success remained classified, known only to a select few. They returned to their units as if nothing had happened, blending back into the ranks of ordinary soldiers. But they knew the truth. They had been part of something that changed everything. The war did not end overnight, but it was no longer the same. Momentum had shifted, strategies were rewritten, and new opportunities emerged. All because of a mission that was never meant to be known, carried out by men who were willing to risk everything for a chance to make a difference. And somewhere in the quiet moments that followed, as the world continued to turn and history moved forward, the story of that night remained hidden, buried beneath layers of secrecy. A reminder that sometimes, the biggest changes in history are not made in the open, but in the shadows, by those whose names may never be remembered, but whose actions echo far beyond their time.